Imagine this. You're going trick-or-treating, and you go up to a house. You see a bowl of candy with a sign that says, "Take one." You look inside, and you realize that there's no candy in the bowl at all. So you walk away sad from that house, and you move on. Now imagine a different situation. You're waiting on an important email. You get 12 new notifications from your inbox, so you take out your phone and you open the app, only to find that all of those notifications were from spam mail. Lastly, imagine you've contracted tuberculosis and you had to go to the hospital, only to find out that the strain that you had contracted was resistant to antibiotics. Now I want you to take a moment to think about how all of these situations are connected. It may seem like there's no correlation between any of these, because how could getting free candy, receiving emails, and taking medication for illnesses have anything in common? Let me explain more. On Halloween, people put out bowls of candy and that trust that other people will only take one piece out. In reality, many people take 2, or 3, or 4, or they just dump the whole bowl in their bag. If this mindset continues, this would be a disadvantage to all the other trick-or-treaters. Moving on to spam emails, I'm sure everyone here has received some. Spam emails can range from companies that want you to buy their items to emails that look like they were sent by 3-year-olds. Most of the time, senders are just looking for those that are most gullible to maximize their profit. Lastly, antibiotics and pathogens. Pathogens are able to carry information from one to the other. When antibiotics are applied and some have resistance genes, those are the ones that survive. They are able to reproduce, mutate, and transfer this information to other pathogens. Thus, illnesses that may not once have had resistance to antibiotics can develop it. So returning back to my earlier question, what do trick-or-treating, receiving spam emails, and using antibiotics have anything in common? There is one thing that they share. They are all subjects of the tragedy of the commons. It affects everything around us, everything we do. If you've taken any environmental, economic, or government class, it is likely that you have heard of the term the tragedy of the commons, coined by Garrett Hardin. The tragedy of the commons is a situation where people act according to self-interest when it comes to open access resources. In more precise terms, it is mass selfishness that affects everything we do. When people neglect to be considerate to others in pursuit of personal gain, everyone, including themselves, is harmed. In every example of the tragedy of the commons, there is an individual actor, shared resource, selfish behavior, and a tragedy. Let me bring this back to trick-or-treating. The individual actors in this situation are the trick-or-treaters. The shared resource, the bowl of candy. The self-centered behavior is the people who take more candy than they should, and the tragedy is the sad children who don't get candy. Now, this situation may seem trivial, since this is something that happens once a year, and is an event that only children take part in. A more common example is the spam emails I mentioned earlier. We can run through this process again. The individual actors are the people that send out these emails, the shared resource is the emailing system, the self-centered behavior is sending out these emails without thinking of the consequences, and the result? A 3.1% loss of productivity per corporate employee, according to the study titled Mitigating the Tragedy of the Digital Commons, an increase in carbon emissions that weren't necessary in the first place, and the overall degradation of the emailing system. The most serious situation in the ones that I've mentioned earlier is the antibiotics. The individual actors are those that apply the antibiotics, the shared resource is the antibiotics themselves, and the selfish behavior is misapplying antibiotics for ailments that don't need them. The tragedy is that those that may be seriously affected by illnesses aren't able to use antibiotics, which may result in the loss of life. As you can see, the tragedy of the commons affects everything. It is not only limited to these examples. Others include fast fashion, air and water pollution, traffic jams, the spread of fake news, social media, the list goes on and on. The consequences of selfish behavior are becoming increasingly worse, immense, and immeasurable. Now you may be thinking, Lauren, we know. Selfishness is innate to human nature. It is always going to exist. When I first heard about the tragedy of the commons, that is what I thought too. Garrett Hardin, the person who came up with this term, proposed that we should establish rules and regulations, privatizing common resources so that mass selfishness wouldn't be a problem in the first place. After all, selfishness is human nature. We must put strict and stringent regulations on everything to prevent terrible consequences. The commons are all around us. The internet, the Wi-Fi, our social platforms, the air we breathe, waters and streams, the oceans, and much, much more. Regulating commons as large as these is important as it protects our environment and prevents mass exploitation of natural resources. Even our social platforms are a major example of a common resource. These are all commons that may need some regulation to really prevent exploitation. However, we're looking for a solution that encompasses mass selfishness that harms all of society, not just the big ones. Common resources can be mundane, like the trick-or-treat bowl I mentioned earlier. How would you feel if you had every single common resource you come across be regulated, like the hand sanitizer dispenser at the front of a store or pencils in the classroom? For one, regulating these commons is impossible to do because of the sheer number of free resources out there, as well as the unease we would feel every day knowing that we would have to follow these strict rules. Law experts like Professor David Brown cite that regulation, especially incarceration, does not deter wrongdoing. He says the system has little to no deterrent effect. All of this is said under the assumption that selfishness is innate to human nature. However, in reality, most of it is learned behavior that is masked as innate nature, as evidenced by scientists like psychology professor Nafo, who state that there is evidence pointing towards humans being innately cooperative, with a few exceptions. But selfish behavior is so prominent in our society that many learn it early on. Almost no behavior is entirely genetic. This means that altruism is present within the brain. Even though recent generations may have already been exposed to selfishness, we could raise the next generation to become more altruistic than we were taught. Though we may not be able to rewrite our past and our history, we are still able to raise the next generation to become less selfish, more altruistic, and more compassionate of those surrounding them. And maybe then, we would be able to work towards bettering our natural environment, as well as our society along the way. Now, obviously, striving for utopia is impossible. But the amount of selfish behavior seen in society currently is tremendous, where behavior that stems from selfishness has caused other people harm, whether it comes from political schisms, different beliefs, use of natural resources, everyday tasks. But amidst the chaos that has struck the world, the divide, and the destruction, it may be best to steer our society the right way. As the Dalai Lama once said, love and compassion are necessities, not luxuries. Without them, humanity cannot survive. I hope that this can be a lesson to my generation, to be able to give up a few of our selfish desires, to teach the younger generation to become more compassionate, selfless, and sensitive to those around them. Maybe then, we can all steer humanity in the right direction, bettering our environment and ourselves along the way. Thank you.